Hey, space weather types. We've got an uptick in solar activity here. We've got a coronal hole high-speed stream showing up. Very high likelihood of large solar flares, a massive active region rising there in the southeast. And plenty more to talk about on today's Daily Space Weather Show. The TMAS would be in your lower left of your screen right there. That would be the new active region. So we'll have at least 2 new named sunspot groups here going into tomorrow. Let's take a look at the past 24 hours. That's just today from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Here are the past 24 hours. So we're going to zoom in and add 131 angstroms here. We've got some spontaneous flaring happening in the southwestern quadrant also from that tiny little sunspot group. So plenty of stuff going on. It's another exciting day for space weather. Also, we've got a new instrument that should be coming online pretty soon here. And here is that southeastern limb. We'll tell you all about it. And by the way, if you enjoy the coverage, please take a moment to press the like button. Take a moment to tell your friends and foes about the channel by pressing share. For those of you whose posts are able to be seen on social media, congratulations. So yeah, press all the things. Leave us a comment. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to press the subscribe button. Otherwise, how would you see the world's most comprehensive daily space weather content delivered directly to your YouTube subscription feed? The quote of the day today is another brilliant one from Albert Einstein. There are only 2 ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. So no matter how bad things might seem, folks, believe me, they can get worse. So be grateful. You're looking at the grass from the right side, right? The green side as opposed to the underside. Yeah, so have a little bit of gratitude for basic existence. Remember, folks, where there's life, there's hope. So no matter how bad things get, they can get worse, but you can certainly improve them also. So yeah, perhaps live like everything's a miracle. Back to some space weather stats. The radio flux now currently at 171 solar flux units. 171 is the radio flux number. So there you can see it depicted for the past year by that black line. And if you're wondering what a solar flux unit is, it's 10,000 Jansky. And a Jansky is a way to measure radiation traveling through the vacuum of space. So basically that's 1.7 million Jansky. 1.71 million Jansky is the current radio flux number. That is emitted from the upper chromosphere and lower corona, which is why we included that animation there to sort of illustrate that feature. So, Space Weather Enthusiast Dashboard, that's NOAA's forecast. Only expecting a little bit of geomagnetic unrest earlier today. I don't think we got it. So not a lot of action there forecasted by NOAA. So there's their Enlil spiral. And ESA did fairly successfully forecast today's coronal hole high-speed stream. It is a pretty weak coronal hole high-speed stream, but there it is on European Space Agency's Enlil spiral. You can see some CMEs there. Those are those non-Earth directed CMEs that we talked about the past couple of days. Next Earth magnetic moment from space, and that's what you can expect to see from a fairly weak coronal hole high-speed stream. That's the past 4 hours to about 12 Earth diameters. This depicts magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Magnetohydrodynamic pressure is expressed in units called nanopascal. So Pascal's always pressure, and this is nanopascal, little tiny pascals, as that field is pretty weak. Anyway, ground magnetic perturbations map is next. This depicts nanotesla, which is magnetic flux density at the ground level for the past 4 hours. And we're not expecting to see any sort of major geomagnetic unrest or anything like that from this coronal hole high-speed stream. But we could get a little. You never know when you see a sudden shift in the magnetic field, for example. But so far as the density and velocity, it's been pretty weak. KP2 is the current situation. It only got up to KP 3.33. So KP2 is the geomagnetically calm situation at the moment. The planetary K-index is an average of global geomagnetism. So here's the arrival of that coronal hole high-speed stream at ACE. Peak density was only about 11 protons per cubic centimeter. Let's take a look at the Discover, which saw a little higher density there, getting up to around just about 20 protons per cubic centimeter. I'll say 19. Just under 20 protons per cubic centimeter there. And the velocity only made it up to about 425 kilometers per second. So the current situation, it's already looking like it's waning here. Only about 380 kilometers per second at 8 protons per cubic centimeter for the density. So a little bit of gyrations happening there in the GOES magnetometer readings as that coronal hole high-speed stream shows up. But, like I said, geomagnetically calm conditions. And moving on to the heliosphere. Has Earth snapped into a North Pole magnetic sector yet? Nope, we're still a few hours out from that. There it is. You can expect the North Pole sector to arrive in the next approximately 12 hours. So chances are by tomorrow's daily space weather video, Earth will have crossed the current sheet and have entered into that green area there, the North Pole heliospheric magnetic sector. Next, our line of sight field plot. This depicts the past 4 days of the sun's magnetic fields. Solar B field in blue, polar fields in red and green for south and north respectively, and of course the photosphere magnetism in grayscale, and next coronal holes. So yeah, North Pole oriented coronal holes rotating in here. And the forecast is for plenty of coronal holes over the next at least 6 months or so. But that's what's going on right now, the line of sight coronal hole plot. And let's move to coronal holes from SDO. So there's our 211 angstroms wavelength, that well-defined coronal hole in the northern hemisphere. That is of North Pole orientation. So in the next few hours, it will be in charge of the magnetic heliosphere sector. And let's move on to sunspots. Sunspot number has dipped once again, despite an uptick in activity generally speaking. There is the sunspot number now at 111 sunspots, according to Royal Observatory of Belgium. 111 sunspots, and we do have a higher likelihood of solar flares than yesterday. So sunspot 3738 is the most likely place to see a large flare. We saw as high as a 1 out of 3 chance for an X flare from sunspot 3738, although the most activity was from an area not yet risen. So that really large plage that you see there in the in the southeast, that is the T-mass, the most active sunspot. We do see one umbra there, but I'm expecting some larger areas to be rising in the next 12 to 24 hours. So, but at the moment, as far as sunspots that we can see, the magnetic fields of sunspot 3738 takes the cake for the most likely to produce flares. Although again, the area behind the limb in the southeast still remains very likely to produce large flaring events. And here are sunspots from Solar Dynamics Observatory. So yeah, sunspot 3738, it's got considerable magnetic shear, a little bit more than it had yesterday. And besides that, not a lot of growth or degradation. And that sunspot in the southwest, that has kind of degraded a little bit, but it has been producing some flares too. So it's a prime example of how you don't need to see a large sunspot to see some flaring activity. And let's briefly show the SDO magnetogram here. And there you can see that significant delta region there, kind of in the middle, a little bit toward the west of that sunspot 3738, which would be the one south of the Earth scale there. It is magnetically complex, and let's move on. I'll let that play for you one more time here before we move to energetic particles and flares. All right. So proton flux here remains at baseline levels. No solar energetic particle events of note. And quite a bit of flaring activity here, but only 2 M-class events in the past 24 hours. The largest was at 22:30 Universal Time yesterday evening. That was an about an M2.5 class solar flare. And let's take a look at that from, there's SDO 94 angstroms. And right at the beginning of that movie, after it resets, you'll see that M2.5 class flare. So right in there, that is our T-mass. So once again, the largest flare there coming from a sunspot not yet visible behind the limb. And probably no surprise to our regular viewers. We'll also show 131 angstroms, or I would note that small sunspot in the southwest, also producing quite a bit of activity there, even though it has degraded a bit. So a great example of the sometimes unpredictability of sunspots to produce flares. So that is the scenario. And next we'll take a look at a star chart. Oh, but before we do that, what about the GOES 19? Yeah, the GOES 19. That's pretty exciting. We're going to have a new coronagraph, folks, so that's always pretty sweet. A new coronagraph on that GOES 19, so that'll be interesting. And it has done some of its preliminary maneuvering here to make it operational. So there's an article on that. Yeah, the GOES 19. Always delighted to see more instruments for our daily perusal, helping with things like coronal mass ejection forecasting. All right, so here's our solar system forecast. We've got the locations of things today. There's where things will be on the 15th. My, how time flies. And here's a star chart for our location. If you want to put in your own, check out skyandtelescope.org. Skyandtelescope.org. We've got the moon chasing Mercury, chasing Venus, chasing the sun, chasing Jupiter to the horizon here over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. Today's astronomy photo of the day. Exoplanets. Yeah, exoplanets. That's 5,500 of them on that image. 5,500 exoplanets approximately have been discovered. If you go back to the mid-1990s, when I considered majoring in cosmology, there were probably maybe a dozen, something like that. And of course, most of them are gas giants because, of course, gas giants are a little bit easier to see due to their large size. Note that extremely egg-shaped one down there in the lower right. apod.nasa.gov if you want to check it out yourself. Next, coronagraphs for coronal mass ejections. So we do have some here, and one of them is somewhat promising looking. So toward the end there's one slight halo-like eruption, and you might be wondering if it's earthly directed. Well, so am I. So let's cut to our custom coronagraphs here. All right. So there's a LASCO C2 and C3 and the SDO all together. And pretty sure those CMEs are not earthly directed. So we will zoom in one level here. Once that resets, there we are. Yeah, we don't anticipate any of those to have earthly directed components. If you disagree, feel free to leave a comment. We encourage rage comments on the channel. Thanks to everybody who's left comments of any kind, increasing the likelihood that people will see the video and have it recommended for them by the Junkware YouTube algorithm. Here we've added 193 angstrom 60-minute running difference. And there's a little closer view, and let's take a look at filaments while we've got that up. Filaments. We named another one today after Smash Staff. And there's another one or two rising there in the east. So that's always interesting. That is Cerro Tololo's ground-based hydrogen alpha telescope, located in Cerro Tololo, Chile. Here's a grayscale imagery. And again, we do have that active region rising there in the southeast. That is the most active portion of the closest star, at least on the Earth side of the disk. And here you can see some flaring activity and some filamentary motions happening over there. So that's pretty cool. Let's blast through bonus features. First, charging hazards. We do have some minor surface charging hazards where low-energy electrons are building up on the outsides of spacecraft. Spacecraft like the GOES 19, in fact. GOES electron flux here is at pretty baseline levels. We are seeing lower electron flux measured by the GOES 16 versus the GOES 18. There's NOAA's forecast, pretty uneventful there, expecting low levels to continue. We'll also show the ionoson, courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. This will be the F flare, which you can see that red F there, not to be confused with a red eft, which is a salamander. The red F depicts the F flare, which is at about 300 kilometers of altitude, and it is quite nominal indeed. So no geomagnetic storms triggered by that weak coronal hole high-speed stream that we currently have striking the magnetosphere. Here's the anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And again, things are pretty calm in the geospace. Here's our global ionosphere nowcast. And last but not least, high-res images from SDO. We always show the refresh. So check out the size of this plage, first of all. That is one gigantic plage. And we do have 2 new sunspot groups associated with that. And we have some significant deltas there with sunspot 3738, which is this sunspot group right here. Mainly at the leading portion of it there, that leading South Pole-oriented umbra, is going to be the most likely place for a large flare, except for behind that southeastern limb, where we are expecting more umbrae to be rising soon. So there's your full disk, and we'll close out with a little closer view of filaments. There we go. How you like them apples? So yeah, that's where we'll close things out. And thanks for tuning in to the Daily Space Weather Show. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And until next time, may that solar wind be at your back.